This is episode number 10 of DTY Talks, and today we're talking to Janora Ware, an artist, wellness advocate, and mother of 4, battling multiple sclerosis, a rare incurable disease that affects the central nervous system. She's talking to us today about exactly what this disease is, who it affects, her unique methods for battling it, and what we can do to help those suffering find a cure. Give us your name. Let us know who we're talking to.
This is Janora Ware.
So part of the reason why I really wanted to speak with you is because I follow you on social media. Of course, I've known you before social media, but I follow you on social media, and I see a lot of the things that you're posting about MS, and March is MS Awareness Month. And I really wanted to speak with someone who is, I'm trying to choose my words carefully, someone who is fighting and overcoming it, not just someone who's enduring it, if that makes any sense to anyone.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So let us know, MS is a relatively rare disease, I'll say, and most of us have heard of it. But a lot of people may not actually be aware about what exactly it is. So can you start off by telling us what is MS?
MS is they believe it to be an autoimmune disease, although lately that's been kind of challenged, that whole theory. But it's based on the fact that the immune system is attacking the body's nervous system by eating away at the myelin sheath, which is a covering along the nerve endings that goes up and down your body. So if you have your nervous system, it's like the electrical impulses that your brain uses to get messages and things and make things move and everything work properly. The covering that protects those nerve endings gets eaten away by the immune system accidentally, whatever, and that causes all the various symptoms of MS, which is why it's always so different and hard for people to understand, because it kind of appears very differently for a person than another person. And even within a lifetime of one person, they're going to go through phases where it could be very different from one day or from 1 year, from one period of time to another. And that's the short answer of what MS is.
And just for clarification, in case anyone's Googling, it's multiple. Is it sclerosis or sclerosis? I'm always suck with the pronunciation of it.
It's sclerosis, and that's just a fancy word for scarring or scars. So it's basically saying many scars, and the scars build up on top of that layer of myelin that is eaten away. There'll be scarring there, and that's pretty much how they can diagnose it, because they'll see the scars in an MRI, and then they can start putting that together. Hard to diagnose, though, that's for sure.
Yeah. And when exactly were you diagnosed, and what was your life like before your diagnosis? What were you doing, or how was your life just different before actually being diagnosed?
Before, I think I was a lot more, let's say mentally I was different a lot, as far as I thought I could do a lot more. Once I got diagnosed, I kind of let myself be limited by what my options were as far as what I could do in my life. Now,
yeah, I was gonna say you are a really great artist, and so just in the art world, it's because I know you from your writing and poetry and just some great things like that. So how did it affect that, or did it?
It did at first, because one of the first symptoms I had was, my legs went, but then my hands went. So it affected my writing. I have journals and books of stuff that I can't even read, but I was still writing, but I can't tell you what it says, but I had to get it out. So, on the media end, it affected that. It also changed what I wrote, too, because it became more closer. It was hard for me for some reason, to get out of my head with it. So a lot of what I wrote had to do with what I was feeling. or what I was going through, at least at that time.
And you say at that time. So when was this?
This was 18 years ago. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Um, and what were the symptoms that actually led you to seek out? Because you mentioned that a diagnosis is like it's hard to diagnose. So what made you say, hey?
Well, I had kind of like in 2000, I had some weird symptoms like numbness and things like that. So I had started going to the doctor to try to figure out, why am I feeling this or feeling that, these small things. And one of the things they were like was, you need to keep exercising. Well, I exercised a lot before that time. Then I got married and had a kid and I moved. So my exercise program did change. So they said you need to get back on your old program. So I was like, okay. So I started going back to the gym, and I got to a point where it was like I was on a machine and like my legs turned into like phantom legs. So it was like they were going, but there was a disconnect in my brain as far as me being able to control them. So after I got through that whole ordeal of figuring out how to get home and getting off the floor of the gym, and I was able to get to the doctor the next day, and then they could see what was happening. So it was pretty dramatic, and it was like, yeah, we kind of have to really figure this out because it was very visible at that time. So yeah, it took them about 2 to 3 weeks for them to actually get to a point where they could diagnose.
Oh, 2 or 3 weeks. So that's relatively quickly. It seems.
Yeah, that was quick, but that was after, a few months of being told I had carpal tunnel and circulation problems.
Right.
A bunch other things that it didn't end up being, but it presented like, and it wasn't until it went so haywire that it was that noticeable that they were able to like say, oh, you need an MRI and you need to do these other tests and eliminate some other things, and then they got to that. So
okay.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask that, like, how did they do some type of process of elimination? Were you under the assumption it was one thing and being treated for that one thing, only to find out that you were, or not you, but they were wrong? So you said carpal tunnel was one, and
carpal tunnel was one. Circulation problems was another one. I think they looked at me for lupus for a period of time, but that's a blood test. So once they got that back, they said it wasn't that. Yeah, so I went through a few months, like where I was getting treated for different things.
For something, yeah. Wow. So how has it? I mean, you mentioned you were physically active before, and it changed your physical activity in many aspects, and we'll get into some of the specifics on that. But emotionally, we can only imagine the toll, and obviously mentally. Has it, or how has it rather affected maybe your spirituality? Maybe, I don't know how spiritual, were you spiritual before that?
I had a weird spirituality before. I grew up very religious, but then at a young age, I kind of like saw through a lot of the religious part, like the
right. Understandable.
Yeah, framework started to fall apart for me. So, but
right.
I still had this like a lot of his spiritual experiences that I couldn't really contextualize into religion. So, luckily, when I got married, I had a mother-in-law who was like a spiritual mentor for me. The first time in my life, so all this happened around the same time. I mean, I literally got married, and within 6 months, I was having problems, and before the year, I was diagnosed with MS. So everything happened kind of quick, and it was like, so she kind of helped me deal with a lot of trying to even just continue to identify my own spirituality in the midst of the things that were changing in my body. So yeah, it did change me. I sought more heavily to nourish my spirit. I think at that point I started reading a lot of different kind of spiritual texts outside of the Bible. I remember going through that and just trying to find a comfortable place for me spiritually to help me deal with what I was going through. So I always had it, but I feel like MS slowed me down enough to cultivate it.
That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, I did. I feel like MS, like in a way, I feel like I was gifted that to slow me down at certain periods in my life and to turn my mind, my direction into other things, because I'm a very strong-willed individual. So I don't necessarily, I feel like in the past I've maybe not always listened to my intuition and kind of like steamrolled ahead in the way that I think that it should be. And with MS has been a way, I feel like that the greater spirit or source has kind of like forced me in several ways to switch things up. And so that's kind of where I am with my spirituality now. I just, I'm very like dialed in, and physically I'm at my worst since I've ever been with MS. So I feel like they don't match, but
okay.
I feel like they can match, but it's going to take some time because I was in a place where I was seeking spirituality and trying to be tuned in, but I was still in a relationship that was pulling me in a very different direction for a long time. So it took a long time, I feel like, for my mental state to get to a point where it was toxic to myself, and then it took even longer for my body to match that up, because I did pretty well with MS for a while. I went through well, I don't know. You might ask this question, but there's 4 different types of MS, so they say. One is a clinically isolated syndrome, where it's basically some people have the symptoms of MS and might have a really bad, what they call a relapse, or a real bad episode, and then never have any symptoms again, irregardless of what they do or don't do. And some people feel like they did things and made that happen, but it's not. There's no like real proof saying that that's the case. This is what the medical community says. Not saying I believe that, but that's one type. The second type is relapsing remitting, which people go through a period of time where once or twice a year, or sometimes 3-4 times. For me, it was like 3 times a year. You go through a period where you have a relapse or an episode of MS, whatever symptoms are going to present at that time, which could be difficulties with walking, talking, using the bathroom, depression, you name it. Anywhere your nerves touch your body, it can affect any part of your body or your brain, and it is an extension of that nerve. So it gets a little complicated, trying to identify what is MS and what's not, especially when it comes to mental state. Yeah. But so I went like that for about 13 years, where it was just 3 times a year I had a relapse, and I would just work through that and then bounce out of it and pretty much be looking like nothing was wrong with me. Not to say that I wasn't feeling things or whatever, but people on the outside could see that, couldn't necessarily see what I was dealing with. And then a few years ago, I transitioned to another stage of MS, which is called secondary progressive MS. And it's basically where they say you relapse and then you don't bounce back. So that's kind of where I fell into the last few years. And I'm not completely sold on that, the prognosis of that. And then the fourth one is some people actually get diagnosed with MS, and it's called primary progressive MS. And from the very beginning, that's what they experience. They just get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. They never have that break. So, yeah, so for me during that relapse remitting time, I played a lot of on faith, where, I felt like at one point I felt like I had MS beat. But I realized now in retrospect, mentally I was hiding a lot of my stuff. I wasn't dealing with my stuff. I was just like just pushing it down. I wasn't dealing with the truth of what I needed to deal with. And then when I finally started to deal with it, everything went another direction. So it was kind of confusing for me. I'm like, what's this message? I don't understand. Like, I'm trying to clean it up, and but it's a process. So I mean, like I said, when I first got MS, I was at a point where I had a very hard time walking. Not as hard as I do now, but it definitely was a very hard time, and I was able to pull out of that. So I'm pretty optimistic that I can pull out of this too. I just have the patience that I know it's going to take some time, because it didn't take a couple of days or even a couple of months for me to get to where I am.
Right.
Or to get to where I was mentally when this process started to manifest physically in my body. So that's where I am now. I don't even know what the question was. You asked.
No. I'm glad you went into that, because this is going with an associated blog post article that some of the information will where I don't ask maybe a general question about MS, for instance, what the many types are. The article will pick up something like that. But I mean, if you happen to cover it, then you happen to cover it, which is great, because I'm sure more people will listen than they will read. So it's all good. I mean, whatever you need to say. But just kind of to go along with the last statement that you were making, as far as not necessarily recovering, but getting better or coming in and out of remission. Or is it remission, or would they call it remission? Okay. There's not a known cure for MS, but they do have drugs to treat it. I'm aware of a newer drug that I found out about. How do drugs, or have they worked for you or not worked for you?
They absolutely have not worked for me.
Wow. Okay.
The only drug that worked for me for a period of time was steroids. I used to take a lot of steroids when I had a relapse, and they would help me come out of it faster. And that's about the only thing I'd say that actually worked. But that's its slippery slope too, because they don't work forever. Then they stop working, and also they can cause other problems like diabetes and things like that. So there's no magic fix and no cure for MS. And for me, now that's my experience. So other people have had success on medications, or at least they feel better. I have not been on. I've tried several. I'm not going to say I've tried all of them, but I've tried almost all of them. And no, I can't say, excuse me, that any of them were helpful. I didn't stay on any of them for very long. I stayed on them long enough to see that they weren't working, and then I stopped. And I mean, I don't mean like a month. I mean like a year.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I always get something at least a year, because those are like immune modifying drugs. So they're not going to start working like, a week after you take them. You kind of have to. But then again, they're immune modifying drugs. So there's all these risks and side effects that come with that sometimes outweigh whatever benefits you think you're getting from the medication. But in my experience, I haven't had any that I would recommend to anybody.
So I'm definitely going to get into some of the steps that you do take. But before we jump down the line for that, I wanted to know, I mean, you mentioned your kids, they're in the background, they're on spring break. How has it impacted your kids? Because some statements, some research suggests that it's hereditary, that it can be hereditary. Are they cognizant of like a certain lifestyle choice that they could make to maybe potentially limit the effects if they're later diagnosed, or like how aware are they of the disease and maybe the potential of actually inheriting it, if that makes any sense?
Right. Well, when I first got MS, that research wasn't out there. It was more like it was saying it wasn't hereditary. The link had not been established. So with my first kid, I didn't have MS. My second kid, I wasn't aware of the link. And even the third one, I don't think I was really aware of the link. Now, the fourth one, I started to question, because I even started to meet people who had it, like, in their families. Like at the hospital I was going to, I met a family, and there was a daughter who had it, and I think a mom and a dad, and it was like their whole family. I was like, wait, what? Right.
So,
But my I took that decision to have the fourth one was definitely a different kind of decision. But I was in a place where that was the best decision to make for us at the time. I felt like, as far as, and I'm still not convinced it's hereditary in the sense that you're going to get it. I do think that you may have a trait, and like you said, there are lifestyle factors that can trigger it. And I've talked to my kids about that, as far as like drinking and smoking. And I mean, there's lifestyle factors that trigger it some of them are lifestyle factors that trigger a lot of other things as well. So, general unhealthy habits, lifestyle habits. So not exercising, not, being sedentary, being overweight, that's another one. Smoking is another one, which I did in high school, which I should have never did. And drinking, excessive drinking, those are the four main ones that I'm aware of. And also a lack of vitamin D. There's a strong correlation to MS and a lack of vitamin D. But I've always chose to live in the South. That's why I stay in the South, for my kids, because I want to be raised below a certain latitude line, There's less cases, in the South because you get exposed to sun more, so, I mean, and they also take vitamin D supplements. So I try to get them, what I am aware of and what I know. I try to, make sure that they know that there are these risk factors and they need to make healthy choices and things like that, not just for MS, but just in general. Because there's a lot of stuff popping out now, especially autoimmune types of diseases. Just so many more of them, and the amount of people affected by them seems to have increased a lot in the last few years. And I don't know if that's diet, or I'd say the last 10 years, I guess. And maybe that's diet, maybe that's lifestyle combination. I'm not really sure, but I believe I try to raise my kids in the most healthy lifestyle that I can. Of course, they're kids; they love sugar,
right?
We do can eat organic. I'm very strict on my diet, so I try to carry over as much of. They can't eat like I do. That's impossible. I try to carry over. I don't buy them separate, produce than mine. So they're all eating organic and. Like I said, they're taking vitamin D, and so they do their things. As far as mentally, one thing I've noticed about them is they're very, especially in the last 5 years, they're very, how do you say, they're not spoiled. They're really good kids,
compassionate.
Yeah, that's it. They don't have, they don't have that. Thing where it's they're judging people based on how they look. They're not like that. They're not superficial. They're not material. They're very helpful, and they're very intuitive about being helpful, and they have compassion for other people. Yeah, definitely. They don't. They're just good kids. I mean, I don't know. A part of it is I think, people question why I had these kids and, and I'm if I didn't have these kids, then things would be very different for me, in a way they keep me going as hard as I am. And they get a lot from watching me go as hard as I do. I had a boss, my former boss was a very nice lady, and she had a mom that had MS, and she actually took care of her in the end stages of her life. But she wrote a book about it, and she gave it to me, and I was reading why she was such a nice person. I mean, a part of the reason why she was so nice was because she had experience younger of that, as tough as it is, but dealing with the issues that her mom was dealing with, which was even worse than what I deal with now, because back then they didn't have very many medications, so she didn't have the advantage or knowledge of diet, or even herbs and things that I do to help me. She didn't have, so it was tough. But I feel like the character of my ex-boss was so like shining from the inside, and I feel like it had a lot to do with her experience with her mom, and it meant the world to her to have been able to take care of her in that way. Especially when she had siblings that didn't feel the same way. So, I mean, I guess it don't happen with every kid, but she felt strongly that she would never have kids because of the MS. So, based on the information that is out now, and I'm not sure if I would, I don't even know. I can't say that. I probably would still do everything exactly the same because I don't see a very strong correlation, at least in my family. Now, if I was somebody else and I had siblings and parents and, a lot of people in the family and which she had, I think her brother also had MS too, so I would probably be a little more, think about it a bit more,
Right. That's understandable.
Yeah, so, but I think that they've been affected in a lot of ways, and they have a lot more responsibilities than most kids. But in a way, like I said, I feel like that builds a lot of character for them going forward. And I'd much rather them be like that than to be like have everything done for them all. Because when I was well, I was doing everything. You know what I'm saying? Nobody was lifting a finger except for me. But now, everybody has to do something. So I'm like, it makes me parent a little bit better, I think, in some ways, because I can't just baby them and do everything for them. I have to teach them how to be independent. So that's one thing, they are very independent. People visit and they're like, oh my gosh, your kids are so independent. I'm like, yeah, they are, because they kind of have to be.
How old are they?
They're 19. Well, the oldest is 19, he'll be 19 in a couple of weeks. And then I have a 14-year-old, so she's the chef of the family. And then I have a 11-year-old, and then a 5-year-old. So
you mentioned, we both mentioned that it doesn't have a known cure, and that there are medicine or drugs rather, and it can only be managed. But how do you now on social media? You really go hard with, showing us your diet, showing us your lifestyle, showing us how you are able to implement exercise as much as possible. Can you tell us some of the unique steps that you've taken and like how and where you learned all these techniques? Because some of it is pretty self-explanatory, like, hey, let's eat some green smoothies and that kind of thing. But some things that I've seen, really, really specific to you and very unique. So can you tell us a little bit about your approach to health?
I think, let me just say, when I first was diagnosed, I did not, under any circumstance, believe that this was something I'd be dealing with my entire life. I just didn't believe anything anybody was telling me that. So I went to a program. It's called Optimum Health Institute. Optimum Health Institute in San Diego. And it was a program that taught me a lot of what I still do. It's about real specific diet and mental and spiritual detoxing and exercise for the lymphatic system, just different ways to try to detox. It's really a detox type of a lifestyle. So now, fast forward some years, and I saw some progress. I saw quite a bit of progress with that without any medication. So that made me, in my mind, that imprinted in me very early that, okay, there are ways to approach this that don't involve medication. They are not going to be as fast as medication, and it may not be accepted, because as soon as you stop taking medication, then you're a non-compliant patient, and that's like a big thing for some people. For me, it's not. It's like, okay, whatever. it's my body, you know, and I kind of always take that approach, like it's my body, trying to tune into what my body needs at that point in time and be, you know, open to change, because your body's going to change. So what I do now is very different than what I did, you know, 15 years ago or even 5 years ago. Now I'm very leaning towards like a mucus-free body, because I've been studying the theory that most of the disease we have develops from a buildup of mucus in our body system, and the mucus triggers inflammation, and then the inflammation is what gets all the, you know, things to start. Okay, I'll get it in a minute. Okay, I'll talk to him in a. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so
mucus buildup.
Mucus buildup, yes. So that's what I'm doing. Like, so the juicing for me is there's a lot of liquid. It's a lot of liquid, not so much eating. It's a lot of juicing. I do protein smoothies because I don't eat any meat anymore. So I'm doing plant protein smoothies just to combat that feeling of weakness from not eating, you know. So I do eat like fresh fruits and vegetables. Sometimes I'll eat cooked fruits and vegetables. Well, not cooked fruit. I don't cook my fruit, but I'll eat like cooked vegetables. I usually eat like once a day, you know. So, but the rest is like flushing my body with nutrients and trying to flush out whatever toxins are there. I don't think there's many toxins there anymore, but I feel like my body is still needs whatever it needs to regenerate, if that makes sense. Because
yeah, it does.
Yeah. So I'm still doing it. So I think I'm pretty much detoxed. Now I just had a birthday, so I did indulge in some things that I don't normally do.
Understandable.
Yeah, so I'm kind of like in that mode. But it's weird though. Once you start the process of detoxing, even when you eat different stuff, you don't have the same reaction. It's like your body's like, my body's like fine-tuned as far as digesting things. And some theories say that your stomach is your second brain.
So
a lot
true.
of stuff stems in digestion, and part of too, while I am so pressed to like give my digestion a system a break by doing more juicing and stuff, is because that allows my cells to spend more time doing other things, you know, like maybe healing, hopefully, you know, fixing themselves, instead of having to work so hard to digest
absolutely
some food, you know. So
absolutely,
that may or may not be that great, you know, for me. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And then along with that, I started to study Dr. Sebi and his whole herbal package, and the whole story behind him and his wife and the theories behind that. And then the guy, I can't remember his name for the life of me, but I believe it's a European guy from the 20s. He might have been American, but he started this mucusless diet theory way back then. So like Dr. Sebi kind of picked up on it and built, you know, his herbal program on that premise. So I studied the herbal program, and then I went and purchased all the herbs, and then I started to create my own medicine. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And it's only been about not even been a whole month since I started taking them, but they're very powerful. I mean, a lot of the medicines they make are based on herbs from nature. So, you know, a lot of the traditional pharmaceutical companies take nature and like extract things or like alter it in certain ways to make it more concentrated, or to make it whatever they want to make it, or to make it so you keep coming back and having to get it from them. And a lot of it is based on nature or natural substances, or directly derived from natural substances. So, you know, I'm starting to get to this point where I'm accepting that it's quite possible that there could be a cure for everything under the sun, but it's under the sun. So, like, you got to find it. But do I believe that there could be one cure that fits everyone that has MS? I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that there is a one cure. I think the closest thing we have right now is a stem cell transplant, but even that only works for certain types of MS, and you have to be in a certain stage, and you can't have certain things going wrong or going right. You know, it's a small subset group that really are the prime patients for that type of procedure to even work. And then usually it works, but it is very traumatic, and you know, some people have died, but it's that's probably the most curative thing that they have out there, in my opinion. As far as the traditional medical community, it would be a stem cell transplant or the work of stem cells themselves, because if you could harness the power they have to regenerate, then you maybe can use that to regenerate the myelin sheath without destroying the immune system, which is what they do now with the transplant. You know, but there's that argument that if you don't reset the immune system, then it's just going to attack all the new growth, you know, which is possible. And what I'm doing with my herbs is trying to alter my immune system and regenerate. Like, I want the whole thing. Like, you know, just like I want my immune system to stop. I want to stop feeling, I want to, like, if I could just level off and feel like I'm not continuing to be at a loss, then that would be a gain for me.
Right. And you said this doctor's name was what? The herb doctor?
Dr. Sebi, Sebi.
Okay. All right, because I'm going to link to this. So, like, if people wanted to visit, you know, like Optimum Health Institute or Dr. Sebi, just to get more information on what they're offering. Are there, now, you know, we brought up the health thing, but is it anything specific that you feel like has sort of like, hey, I can feel this working, or is it more of a faith-based, like I'm just going to keep doing it until, because I know it's not hurting me, whereas with medicine, you don't know whether it's hurting you. Well, are there like certain ingredients or certain parts, because I'm just curious, you know, some of the things that you may mix into a smoothie or you may eat that you may feel like is pushing you in a positive direction versus not.
Definitely. Some things I do feel almost immediately, like I've been gluten-free for some years, right? But
yeah, me too.
Like when I do, if I ever do intake gluten or have to go back, or, you know, or for some reason it happens, I can, in the past, it would be a little more, it used to happen more, but now it don't happen as much. But if it were to happen for some reason, I would feel that. Like, I would feel it. And maybe it was mental, but I definitely would feel like my body shift, like, and things would be more heavier. I'd be more tired. Like, it just generally slowed me down. So removing some things, I definitely noticed the change. And then, like I said, adding in, like, the plant protein to my smoothie, I definitely noticed that pretty quickly. When I drink juice, I'm, like, live juice, and I'll have, like, maybe 24 ounces at a time. I'm buzzing, like I'm on a high. I'm buzzing for a period of time. So, like, you definitely feel it. And as far as the herbs that I just started taking, I even feel those, like, and if I happen to miss a day, you know, which happened a couple of times during the last 2 weeks, just because things have been crazy, I definitely can tell that I missed a day. You know, it's like by the end of the day, I'm like, dang, you know. But as far as, yes, I definitely feel a lot with my body. So that's kind of how I can tell, like, if something is off or, you know, needs to be addressed that I'm missing or needs to be changed or altered, then I can kind of, I can tell by just feeling it out in my body. And I think that has a lot to do with me clean eating and being so in touch with my body and removing a lot of the medications that they had me on. Because this time last year I was on chemo, you know, so that was that's the last straw for them. You know, they have the top strongest drugs. I think Ocrevus is a version of what I was on, and that's chemo. And The other one that's a top drug, gosh, I can't even remember the name of it, but it's also another form of chemo. So that's a really strong. Those are really strong drugs. They cause
I can
other.
imagine.
They can cause other problems. So, so like once I was able to get that out of my system, I feel like I was able to be a little more in tune to what was actually going on in my body outside of the medicine. Because then that gets confusing when you take a lot of medicine. Because like you said, with medicine, that little part in the commercial where they're like, da-da-da-da-da-da, all nice and sweet. It's a lot of side effects there, and other things that can happen. Some of those side effects are other diseases and cancer and, like death. And, it's like you have to, there's a risk, especially the stronger medication you take, the higher the risk. So, like, being able to come off of that and still feel like I'm not getting to a point where I need to be in a home, assisted living or something. I'm not to that point yet. And I seem to be pretty stable where I am. So I think that that's a win for me, but I feel like coming off of all those medications, you do better of actually feeling what your body is telling you instead of masking it with medication. Like sometimes I feel like if I have a tremor or a spasticity thing, instead of taking a pill for it, maybe I need to get up and walk around. Like my body's trying to move on its own, so let it have some space to move. But it does, those tremors and things, they hurt. So I mean, it's a lot to deal with because people don't like pain. They don't like to be uncomfortable. And I don't either. But over the years, I've learned to deal with it because I don't want to be a vegetable either. So
Right.
And see, I commend you for that. Just watching everything you do. I'm not a doctor by any means. Just, the company is doctors to you, but I'm not one of the doctors that comes to you. But just in writing these articles and doing these interviews, you learn a lot. And, you mentioned the you mentioned the microbiome, even though you didn't call it that. But, as far as like your gut being your first brain, your brain is your second brain. But everything starts in the gut. Everything starts in the gut. But just watching in admiration of some of the things that you've been doing online and then even offline, I'm aware of some of the things, and we'll get into that a little bit later. The reason why I say I commend you is because I've also experienced people on the other end, not specifically with MS, but with things. I mean, Black folks have diabetes like crazy, and then, a whole host of other things. And just being so stubborn and wanting to stick to a certain diet that has the same diet that got them there, and not taking those steps to learning more about their body. You know what I mean? And being more in tune, noticing, okay, if you eat something and it makes you feel weak, or you eat something and it gives you excessive gas, or you eat something, it just like paying attention to that.
Right.
Yeah. It sounds like such a minor thing.
No, I know.
But,
I know exactly what you're talking about. My dad is like a milk drinker.
Oh, gosh.
One time he told me, I said, I'm allergic to milk. He's like, how are you allergic to milk? I was like, well, it gives me gas. He's like, it gives me gas too. That doesn't mean you're allergic. Like, wow.
It means you just deal with it, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I said, I don't want that gas. No, thank you. I'm good.
Exactly.
That's fine. Right. People overlook the fact, like, since I've changed my diet, I rarely have gas. Like, I don't even have it. Like, I don't ever burp. Like, I'm serious. Like, this rarely happens. Because it's like, my body's not disagreeing with anything really that I'm putting into it. So, but that's so fun.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, just certain family members in particular of mine that I have experience with, having a host of things. I mean, from diabetes to heart disease and all of these things. And it's like, okay, they'll call me up because they know I'm not a doctor, but they know that I am familiar with doctors. I'll say, as far as working alongside them and talking to a bunch of doctors for this program and our blog and a whole bunch of other stuff. So they'll ask, so I'm having this issue. What do you think I should do? And of course, I can't like write a prescription for anything. So I'm going to just tell you what I'm going to ask, like, what are you eating? What are you drinking? Like, what are you doing? Like, are you moving? And then give like suggestions. Just as an example, a family member called me up and said that they had issues actually going to the bathroom. Number one, not number two, just actually peeing. And my first thought was you need to not just drink more water, but maybe have some, maybe put something in your water, electrolytes or something like that to maybe help those kidneys out a little bit. Your kidneys are like dying. Yeah. So I gave it like a few different like teas and things like that. Even teas you can make with like parsley tea and, dandelion root tea. Just simple things that you could do just to help out a little bit. That's not going to harm you, even if it doesn't, really help you out that much. Because again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to prescribe anything, but something that won't hurt. If at the very least, you're going to benefit from drinking dandelion root tea. You're going to benefit from drinking parsley. It's going to help that liver and those kidneys. Just things like that. But you're doing a whole lot to raise awareness about MS, even if it's just through your own social media. But I'm aware of some other projects that you may be working on that I want you to talk a little bit about. And also, what is your goal? I mean, I know you want to raise awareness for MS. Is that the end goal? Because if it is, then great. But just tell us a little bit about those projects that you're working on.
Okay. Well, one thing that I have going on is a vlog on YouTube, and now it's called Chasing Purple, and it's just to bring awareness to people dealing with MS, or really it's turned into people dealing with anything health-wise in a sense, because like you just pointed out, there are some lifestyle choices and things that we do affect the quality of our life and our health, no matter what you're dealing with, whether you're dealing with MS or diabetes or depression, how you treat your body and your mind and your soul collectively directly affect how you are existing on this planet and what you get done. So that's basically Chasing Purple is, and I try to address like different aspects of MS that I felt like are, are hot topics in a sense, like exercise, diet. We talked about having support and identifying toxic relationships and like finding ways to get out of that and stuff like that. I plan to do, I don't know how long I plan to do that. I still have a lot more things I want to address. So it's when it feels like it's done, it's going to be done.
Right.
That started as an addendum to a GoFundMe campaign I was trying to do to raise money for myself to get a stem cell transplant. But what I've discovered in the meantime is that it's time. Like I have time now. My time is now. So I have to be doing things actively now with my body to make the changes I need, because it's going to take time. So I don't have wait time to get money from a GoFundMe campaign. But what I was able to do was raise money to actually buy these herbs that I got, that I've been using. So in a sense, it really did like work out in a way where I was able to get more solid on the direction I'm going in my own healing path, and reach out and ask for help, because that's something I've been learning the last 3 years, because I'm telling you, for many years, only my family knew because they would see me in a relapse. But if you didn't see me in a relapse, you wouldn't know it. And I took care of everybody, and rarely asked for help, and I had a hard time receiving it if it was offered. So in the last 3 to 5 years, that whole paradigm has shifted for me. I'm in a wheelchair now, so I've had to ask for a lot of help and receive a lot of help and be okay with that. So now it's like a balance. Yeah, so now I'm giving back too in my own sense and trying to help other people in my story, because along with that, not knowing I had MS, that was a big thing for me mentally. I didn't want nobody to know, So, like, for me coming out last year and raising awareness and saying, hey, hello, I have MS, that was a big step for me to just show people that you don't have to hide behind it. Even if it is an invisible disease for you, you're okay. Like, you can be okay. I'm not saying you have to, like, wear it as a badge and, like, go do it all the time. But you can be okay with yourself and accepting it in a way where you're not accepting it like it's the worst thing, but accepting it as it's a part of your journey and accepting your victory in that moment, whatever that is, because there's always one. Right. So, just perspective there. So, like, that was another project I'm working on. And then another MS project I'm working on is a documentary with a friend. And we're putting together a documentary for MS called Body Snatchers. And the name kind of tells you the nature of MS, because it kind of just comes in from inside and snatches little parts away of your body, and that's how it feels to a person living with it. And that's how it is to a person watching someone living with it, because they have to sit there, and see it. That's not always easy either. So that film or that documentary is to bring a new awareness, in a sense, to MS. Like, my big thing is I feel like people have a lot of misconstrued ideas, or not, because it is so different for everyone. They don't realize it's a snowflake disease. So just like snowflakes, each one is different. It's the same thing for MS, just like people, So we wanted to look at that, and also look at in the film how the pharmaceutical companies are offering drugs, but the treatment are management drugs, and they say they're disease management drugs. And it's really exactly that, in a sense, where they're managing you to be sick with a lot of these drugs. So, like, I did want to point that out, because I feel like there's a theme people experience when they get MS, or they're dealing with it, with the doctors being in, I want to say, having, let me backtrack. I feel like that people should understand that there are other options to treat MS, and that are outside of the pharmaceutical and traditional medicine category. And I feel like that these options need to be more awareness needs to be around some of these options, and more awareness needs to be on the true nature or the full impact of these drugs on the disease in the long term. I feel like that part is not being said. It's like the drugs themselves are affecting the people as the disease progresses. So it's an issue that needs to be addressed. And that's my personal view of it. I'm not going to say that that's exactly the stance of the documentary, but that's definitely something we will be looking at and trying to inquire about and show where is it all going. And I'm actually am just getting settled with my healing, and I'm just like really focusing on trying to maintain this system that I'm perfecting as I go along, and chronicle it, and hopefully be able to help other people with that as well. So I don't know if that's in the form of consulting or reading. Like, I don't know, because I do that too. I do a lot of tarot readings and rock readings and things that I used to do, like, for people that I had stopped doing for a while. Because, like I said, the MS for me in the last 5 years has been very different, a whole different ball game from the beginning and from the middle, and I don't want to call this the end, but this I don't know, Act 3 or whatever it would be of the MS, because Act 4 is yet to come, So I'm definitely focused on healing and as much ways that I can put that out for other people and just general wellness. I definitely want to keep doing that. I'm starting an online wellness boutique, actually. I'm working on that as well, and hoping just to offer advice on products that I've used and things that some of the things I felt helpful, and and even just advice and knowledge to get out the information that I'm discovering as I work on my own, healing path. So, yeah, that's kind of where I want to go with it. That's where I'm going with it. We'll see how it develops.
And that actually kind of took on the last question, which was as far as like movements, do you believe like the health things on the health front is the way to go? And it sounds like to you it is, which kind of really goes in line with, our philosophy at Doctors to You, is like preventative and as natural, as close to nature as possible, any type of, whether it's food or medicine, to try to stay as close to nature as possible with our approach. So what's the prognosis for MS as a disease? Like, is it decreasing? I know you mentioned it could be increasing just because autoimmune diseases are. And again, health being at the forefront, and you're going to be offering some great advice via the web for folks to go. But what is the current state of it?
I definitely feel like it's a shift in consciousness coming in regards to this, or it's already started, but I feel like it's gonna just open up maybe in a bigger way, hopefully. I mean, I think this is great what you're doing with these doctors.
Doctors to You, coming to you.
Doctors to You, right. I think that's great because, like you're saying, using natural and going as much natural or close to the earth or close to your body, and your body's like the earth, We're set up similar systems. I mean, we're in sync. So it only makes sense that you find that harmony and you find that balance with those two different, approaches. I mean, I definitely feel like, traditional medicine, if you break a leg or you got to have heart surgery, you know what I mean? There's a lot of
exactly
where traditional medicine is, yes, like when I had my fourth child, I started hemorrhaging really bad, and I nearly died. They had to give me adrenaline and all this stuff, and 17 blood transfusions. I lost all the blood in my body. It was crazy. But it was basically if I had tried to have that baby at home, I wouldn't have made it. That's how fast it happened. It was crazy. And I was thank God, that I was in a hospital and that I had these surgeons, right away, going in there, fixing that, because otherwise it would have went another way. It was crazy. So, I definitely am on that page. And, yeah, my website and my company, Una Luna, we'll be putting out just the same knowledge and the same caliber of products that could be useful. And a lot of stuff you don't even really need to buy, like you said, dandelion, it's growing in my front yard. I can go pick it out. It's a lot of weeds and stuff that we have natural that we just don't even really, are aware of, are useful. So
or just call them weeds.
Yeah, right. Or you just chop them up. I mean, and then you can grow stuff, even that. I plan to start a garden. It's been a while since I gardened, but I'm going to get back into it this spring. So I'm excited about that. But even that, growing stuff and just getting it back to the earth and getting in tune with the earth and getting, in the earth, putting your hands in, getting the stuff out of it, putting it in your mouth, and instead of stuff out of a box or out of a can or out of a, red things that aren't even food, some of the stuff the kids eat, I'm this isn't even a food. What is this? You're eating glue, you're eating, I don't know, Jell-O. I mean, I don't know. It's just weird stuff. I'm what is this? Well, yeah, I was a kid too, so I know. But when I think about it, this stuff we're feeding ourselves is not even food, half of it. So that can be right. But I definitely feel like it's a shift of consciousness going on a lot of things. So I just feel like we keep promoting it and keep putting it out there, then the systems are going to have to change to keep up.
Right.
So
Great, sounds good. So I'm going to link up to pretty much everything you mentioned as a resource. But tell us where we can find you.
You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. Instagram, I am J_Karma. And then I'm on Facebook as, I think it's J. Rashawn Ware on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter, too, at JW5Karma with a KHARMA.
Okay. I can look these up and verify them before I link because, they're not going to just link right now as we're talking. So I have time to look them up.
Okay. Oh, I forgot. It's live. We're not live, right?
Yeah, we're not live. So we can definitely, link those things up for people in case they want to support you in any way or, just kind of check you out, follow you and get into whatever the case may be. Because I'm sure following you on Instagram would definitely be worth their while. I would have to say is definitely an inspiration for me. So,
thank you.
Is it anything? Oh, you know what? I wanted to mention, Dr. Stu is actually doing the MS walk. So yeah, part of, following you, and just seeing what you're doing was actually a motivation for me to even write the article about MS for MS Awareness Month back in March. So late April, we are going to be doing the walk here in DC. I know you're not in DC, but in DC, it's on April 29th.
Yeah, ours is on the 25th. So yeah, I'll be doing it too. Yeah.
In Georgia.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to let you know that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Cool. So was there anything else that you wanted to add that you might have left out or any salutations?
I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to actually speak my mind and share what I feel is useful to share. And also for everyone, I feel like moving forward, just recognizing that we are all one is what I'm saying, and like the more together we get individually, the more together we can get collectively. Mm-hmm. That's with our health and our wealth and our purpose as well. So I just want to throw that out there.
Awesome. So thank you so much. I want to thank Janora for her insight on how you can take your health into your own hands, whether you and your doctors believe there's a cure or pharmaceutical treatment right now or not. The important points that we mentioned in this talk are synced up in our show notes on our website at doctorstoyou.com. And to learn more about how you can take part in an MS walk right here in DC or in your own hometown, go to nationalmssociety.org, and that website will be linked up on the posting for this episode on our website. For more DTY Talks, in-depth conversations with health, wellness, and fitness experts, visit doctorstoyou.com and everywhere on social media at Doctors to You.